Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us again for this weekly live stream. Sunday night if you're in the West or Europe, and Monday morning here in Asia. We appreciate you being here. Quick check who managed to make the journey to be with us. Niels, Han Dynasty, how you doing? James Richter, how you doing? Vincent is here. Vincent, good morning. Ernest Blackmore, hey gang, happy Thanksgiving everyone. Yes, this is the week for Thanksgiving. If you're celebrating that in the US, actually we should be thankful for a lot of things, but nonetheless, it has become a holiday back in the States. It's been holiday for a while. A lot to be thankful for. Then again, a lot to be concerned for, but nonetheless, still a lot to be thankful for. I'm thankful that each and every one of you are here and continue to support us. Thank you all for that. Pablo Pina, how you doing, my friend? Carrie Ellen Wilder, how you doing, man? Let's see. I'll throw this in real quick. Your title to tonight's program says it all. Up to 1914, the gold coin standard was a near perfect system. The gold exchange system agreed to in 1922 could not hold a candle to the old system. Absolutely. And in fact, Vincent Tie, the very same, one and the same Vincent who is here in us with chat, he wrote an article in one of our newsletters recently, I think just last week. And so I wanted to just read through that article with you all and then get your take on it. So, Vincent, great job. Um, chime in, chime in, chime in. You're the author of a great article. So let's, chime in, please. All of you. Peter Frowine, how you doing, Zen? Aloha, how's it from Hilo? How you doing, Zen? I haven't been to Hilo in a while, but it's one of my favorite places for sure. Let's see, 4-9. How you doing, Patrick Bateman? All right, so we'll get started shortly, and we'll be taking a look at a few things. Hopefully, our blood won't boil too much. So, hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television SBTV, the live stream, our weekly live stream where we touch base from past interviews, news, economics, things like that, and where we just kind of share our thoughts on things. So, again, appreciate you all being here. If you are new, go ahead and type in new and where you're from, and we'll see if we can go ahead and acknowledge you. Looking through it, I see a lot of the stalwarts here. Nicholas, Nasty, Mickey. First time I think I've seen you here. Welcome aboard. Harold B, thank you. Appreciate that. 5-5. Bill P4, how you doing from Pennsylvania? Appreciate you joining us. Yes, Vincent chiming in. Carrie Ellen Wilder, you know your gold history. She's smart. She is definitely a smart one for sure. Peter Frowine, yes, absolutely. Show the love, thumbs ups. We absolutely do appreciate those. Uh, Subscriptions, please do subscribe. I mean, you know the drill. We'll go through it all. Thumbs up, subscribe, and probably more importantly, share it with your friends. The more you can share with people, the better it may be for all of us. So, again, thank you, one and all. You can always find us at silverbullion.com.sg. This is our website here in Singapore. Yes, we do sell gold and silver. We even vault here in Singapore. And more than anything else, we do specialize in wealth protection, systemic wealth protection. As I say week in and week out, a lot of you out there already know what's going on. You're taking the measures to protect yourself, your family, even your friends, and of course your wealth, because make no mistake, this is pretty much all about money, how money is going to be defined, redefined, and there is nothing better than sound money. So if you have questions, please do shoot us an email, sbtv@silverbullion.com.sg, and we'll walk you through it, work things out with you. Silver Bullion SG is where you can find us on Facebook. Silver Bullion PL for Private Limited. It's where you can find us on Twitter. Instagram, if you like these nice photos and visual appeal means a lot to you, go ahead and subscribe to Silver Bullion SG on Instagram. Jesselyn, she's been taking some really great photos, so we appreciate her hard work. And Jessica as well, her sister, they've been doing some great jobs with the editing and touch ups. So great job. Audio only versions bit.ly/SBTV iTunes or SBTV Spotify and Crisis Tracker. If you have that Telegram app, please do search t.me/crisis tracker. Even if you don't have that app, go ahead and download it. You can download it for your mobile phone or for your desktop. It is a free app, one of the more secure ones. So we've been told. And this is where Vincent and I we go ahead and we search through the news, we jump in the weeds, we get dirty for you, and we try and find out the things that matter most. Hopefully, whether it's gold, silver, finance, economics, things like that, and we really try to verify and make sure that what we feed out to you or what we put on this group, it is real. It is real, and we always look for more than one source. So again, I do hope you join this group, t.me/crisis tracker. Go ahead and search for it, and let's all get through this together, as we always say. All right, so moving on, upcoming guest, Jim Forsyth, Citizens for Sound Money. Okay, Jim Forsyth from Citizens for Sound Money. He's been doing some really great work out there. He is a former Republican member of the New Hampshire Senate, having represented the 4th District from 2010 to 2012. And then he moved to Stratford, New Hampshire, and became involved in politics after a career in the U.S. Air Force. Jim has since ventured into helping people understand the value of sound money. And in fact, he even creates and mints his own silver coins and bars. I tell you, he's a pretty interesting guy. So I do hope you will subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when this interview comes up. And of course, thumbs ups are always appreciated. So hopefully, Jim is going to take us through a workshop where they go ahead and do the magical things to silver that they do there. All right. We want to give you the $10 Amazon gift card. I do believe we are caught up with giving these cards out. And hey, we don't mind. We don't mind. This is our simple way to say thank you for supporting us. We want to give you this gift card. Now, to get it, be one of the first 5 to answer a question from a past interview correctly in this live stream before the timer runs out. In this case, it's going to be the interview with Chris Powell from Ghana. US winners, you're going to be given a link to download the gift card. Non-US winners, you might have to ask Amazon, hey, please exchange this gift card. It doesn't work in my country. And they'll usually do it for you, no problem. They're pretty good with that. And of course, provide us an email during this live stream. sbtv@silverbullion.com.sg will be sufficient. Okay, so before we get there, just want to touch base with you all there. Yes, absolutely. Vincent chiming in here. T.me/slash crisis tracker. This is where you can go ahead and join that group. Uh, Mr. Nguyen, how you doing? It's nice to say gold is not digital money. True. And I tell you, digital money is going to be more and more and more. And one more from Vincent before we get to that question. While doing research in the article, I came across many articles confusing the gold exchange standard as the real gold standard. So they blame the gold standard's failure for the Great Depression. And I think, we've heard this time and time again where the fault of the gold standard is it caused the Great Depression. Well, as Vincent dug in, and he did dig in, he found that no, 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 it wasn't the gold standard. It was the gold exchange. And we'll read Vincent's article and run through it. Before that, let me get to this $10 Amazon gift card. I know you folks are waiting. So here's the question. Chris Powell says sound money is the end of blank. Chris Powell says sound money is the end of blank. Okay, go ahead and take a guess. You might get it. You never know. You never know. Yes, Peter Frowine. I am a 2-time gift card winner going for lucky number 3. Well, they say things happen in threes. Never know. You might get it. You might get it. Let's see. James Richter, Francis on interview was incredible. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Francis is one guy you basically ask him, or let him know what's on your mind and just get out of the way. I mean, he is absolutely one of the best with what he does. So, okay, Chris Powell, sound money is the end of Bill Wood says Tampa. No, 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 how you doing, Bill from Tampa? Okay, Nicholas Nasty says paper. Henry debt. James Bell says fiat. James Richter corruption. Ralph Steiner says U.S. empire. 4-9 fiat. Henry fiat. Peter Frowine fiat. Fiat. Let's see, sanity. You know what? I'll take that. That's not the right answer, but I like that one for sure. Manipulation, Pablo Pina fiat. James Richter says empire. Let's see, a lot of fiat. Fiat, corruption, manipulation. Insanity. Okay, so that's it. We will let's see. Okay. We'll kind of end it there. The answer was actually empires or empire. So we have. Let me check real quick. We have two guys, I believe, who actually got it. Rolf Steiner. Rolf Steiner says U.S. empire, empire. So absolutely correct. And then we also have James Richter, who also said empire. So two guys who managed to get the correct word. Empire, empires. They both work. Let's see. Okay, so that'll be those two winners. And just to make sure that that was the correct answer, we'll go ahead and revisit Chris Powell from the Gold Antitrust Action Committee unit. Okay, I guess my fat thumbs got in the way again with spell check. But Chris Powell from GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. Let's make sure that that's what he indeed did say.
Sound money is the end of empire, Pat. If you go to a gold-based system, I mean, that means your money is limited. And that's why governments hate gold, because it puts enormous restraint on them. If they break out of a commodity money system, well, they can have infinite money. And that's what we do have. And now we're having inflation approaching the infinite scale.
All right, so Chris Powell, sound money is the end of empire. I think we've seen this throughout history over and over and over again. They start off with the sound money, then they go ahead and debase it. And next thing you know, the empire crumbles. The money is limited in a gold based system. That is true, though. But again, that's because it makes everyone accountable and responsible. And by everyone, I mean the banks and our leaders, which is why governments hate gold. They don't want to tax you. You will never vote them back in if they tax you. Instead, they want to give you free things, kick that can down the road. And in order to do that, money cannot be attached to any type of commodity or anything like gold, anything like silver. So commodity based money will limit an overexpansion of the money supply. Just a good thing or a bad thing? I think I know what you guys are going to say, but go ahead and leave your thoughts, and we'll go through them, and we'll see what we come up with. We'll see what we come up with. Um, okay, so two more clips actually from Chris Powell.
Gold is a mechanism central banks have used in the past to devalue their currencies, to devalue their debt, and reliquefy themselves. That's what Roosevelt did in the United States in 33 and 34. That's how governments can cover their debts, devaluing them and upwardly revaluing the gold. And all of a sudden, their dollars are devalued, but their gold is revalued upwards so much they come out ahead. We could be on the verge of that right now. It wouldn't surprise me.
All right, Chris Powell, continuing on. Central banks have to use gold to devalue their currencies. This is true. This is true. A gold devalues debt and reliquefies. Do you think money creation will be accounted for with gold this time around? What do you think? Because if gold has to account for all the money creation, this is where people like James Rickards and others they get gold at being $50,000 an ounce if it has to revalue the currency that has been printed. Now, I mean, that 50,000 does sound good for sure, but again, we really got to kind of wonder what type of world will that be if gold is revalued to 50,000, and even if it is, what value does 50,000 bring? I mean, we may be at a time where we may not want 50,000 in fiat. So, again, things to consider. Gold is a long game. It's a hedge against all of the things that we are seeing happening now, which is why it is important to really take a look and understand the value, the meaning, the worth of having gold and silver. Now, nothing I'm saying here is financial advice, professional or otherwise. It's just things that we do on our own. So let me look through here real quick. Let's see. Yeah, James Richter, you're welcome. So I'll be looking through your comments again, and one more clip from Chris Powell.
There's positive news from the gold and silver standpoint. I mean, our consultant Bob Lamborn on the BIS has noted that the BIS's monthly position in gold swaps and leases has collapsed this year since January. I mean, I just looked it up before we got together here. The BIS's lease and swap position is down 89% since January, from 501 tons to 57 tons. It stayed at that low level for 2 months in a row. People who are far more informed about this than I am think that this indicates a withdrawal by the major European banks from underwriting the gold leasing and swap market. That's probably connected with the new Basel III restrictions that require bullion banks to have full collateral for their gold trading. This is a major change that has happened in the last year. And if the paper gold trade fades out and is replaced by more physical trading, the price will rise substantially.
All right, Chris Powell, the BIS gold swaps, they have collapsed according to his research. This is what he is seeing. The banks may not be underwriting the leasing and swap market. Again, this may have to do with Basel III. They really need to have this gold in order to do these types of things. Now, if paper gold trading does phase out, physical trading may push up the physical price. And I've said this before, if this happens, and I do think we are seeing it happening right now, we are going to see the price bifurcate between the spot price, the paper trading price, paper futures trading price, and the true physical price. I mean, I think, I've said this before, as we look back, as we go down the road and look back through history, this may be the time where the two prices of metal actually bifurcated. Paper had their own price and physical had their own, because you can't, it's very, very hard to get physical near that spot price like we did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So something to keep an eye on, and something to watch. The comment with Francis Hunt, his personal experience with FTX collapse reminded him that counterparty risk isn't in criteria for investments, important criteria for investments. Many don't think much of it when things go well. Hey, what do you know? I had a Biden moment there, right? That's what happens when you read straight from a teleprompter. Uh, but yeah, Francis did have an experience with it, and he, uh, of course, he wasn't happy. He was very honest about it, and that was something that we did appreciate, something that we always do appreciate it. Harold B. Government will never give up fiat. Um, True. I It's going to be very difficult to take that away from government. And Ralph Steiner, yeah, BRICS nations absolutely are preparing uh, for a breakaway from the U.S. empire. And this is the part where we talked about the pieces on the chessboard. They're moving. Things are shuffling. Old alliances may no longer be. New alliances, and a lot of it having to do with resources, are where it looks like we are headed to. All right. Moving forward, Gerald Salente's Trends Journal, his weekly message: ECB rates up, economy down, and corporate bond beat down. Gerald Salente, coming from his recent Trends Journal: Americans voted last week in the midterm elections to decide what criminal gang they prefer to rule them. I don't even want to say these two words already, but if you saw members of the Bloods and Crips walking toward you, you would want to do what you can to run away from them. But in the US, in which the two gangs have full control, people cast their ballot for politicians who take you to war, and they rob your money at the same time. This week's issue went to press, or when it went to press, reports emerged from Poland, and that, which is a NATO ally, that a country R missile fired during the bombardment of country U hit a Polish border town, killing two. And of course, Joe has been clear that the US would defend every inch of NATO territory. Warsaw is holding emergency security meetings, and the State Department has been in touch with Poland and is weighing the evidence. Again, this was last week before they had found more evidence as to what happened. The country, our defense ministry said photos of the missile fragments have nothing to do with country or weapons. Now, before they invaded the, where Trends Journal said the two countries should negotiate for peace instead of igniting World War III, with nearly 70 billion of American taxpayer money already sent to Ukraine to basically keep the war going on. And the Joe administration announced that it wants to send even more to Kyiv. Any calls for peace are banished in the mainstream media, so it is important to spread the message, stop the killing, and negotiate for peace before World War III escalates into nuclear war. And at the time of this writing, we did not know as much as we did, including FTX and the circle that they ran in. So news unfolds, and it really unfolds quick. ECB rates up, economy down. Officials of the European Central Bank denied claims of a pending dovish pivot that would lead the bank to slow its pace of interest rate hikes or stop them entirely. Instead, members of the central bank rate study committee said that rates could rise more than high enough to shrink consumer demand. Shrink consumer demand. I guess that's another word for make it where you can't afford it and weaken the region's economy in the ECB's struggle to break inflation. Now, the comments came as ECB policymakers pushed back against criticisms and political leaders that higher rates will harm economic growth. The higher rates are considered by many to be a rash choice. Giorgia Meloni, Italy's new prime minister, said last month. Emmanuel Macron, France's president, complained that the bank's smashing demand with its high rate hikes. The bank boosted its key rate from 0.5% to 1.5% since June and is expected to add at least another half point next month. In a situation where monetary policy lags behind the curve, the macroeconomic costs would be significantly higher, said Joachim Nagel, president of Germany's Bundesbank, meaning that letting inflation run would harm the economy more than higher interest rates will. What a choice. Corporate bonds beat down from 1 October 2021 through 9 November this year on index following investment grade corporate bond prices lost about 20% of its value, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, according to some measures, the bond prices have lost more than during any year dating back to 1926, about the time of the Great Depression, just a little bit before it happened. Now, the yield on bonds issued by companies with strong financials is about 6%, roughly double what it was a year ago. Less well off corporations and small businesses will have to offer a distinctly higher interest rate to borrow money, according to the Wall Street Journal. The manufacturing, real estate, and retail industries are seeing sales decline as rising interest rates have left fewer people able or willing to afford pricey purchases. See how that works when ECB talked about demand. Carvana, the online car dealer, is exemplary of corporations' worsening plight. The company's sales shrank 8% in this year's third quarter, while the size of its interest payments tripled as interest rates climbed higher. Bonds Corvana issued this year survived the pinch, had to, or to survive the pinch, had to fetch a 10.25% return to lure buyers. The bonds currently trade at less than half of their face value. So you can see what is going on there. And speaking of bonds, let's take a quick look at the yields on bonds or treasuries. Before that, let me run through some comments here. Harold B, yes, CBDCs are still fiat. Uh, I tell you, there's not a lot of good feelings towards CBDCs, and yes, I know the U.S. is working with a few banks to test their new digital dollar. So these things are coming. These things are coming for sure. Okay, so speaking of bonds and yields and these types of things, let's go ahead and take a look at where we are. So again, you want this slope to move gradually up and to the right. That is when economies are doing good. When it starts inverting, economies are doing bad, and a recession typically follows. So this is what's happened so far this year. So we can see January, we still did have that gradual up and to the right. But I tell you, by the time it comes, May, June, July, and then really where we are now, you can see the short end really getting pushed up. So come April, you see the mid-range bonds starting to flatten out. Okay, the yield curve was starting to flatten. As we moved on to June, look at the low end, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. They really start to giddy up and get going, pushing up higher. And again, 1 year, 2, 3, 7 year flattening out, and then it starts to invert. We can really see that inverting. And when I say invert, I mean when we look at the 10 year, third one from the right, the 10 year versus the 2 year. This is how it's usually people usually measure it. But when you look at it today, I want you to take note of the 30 year, 3.92. Okay, 3.92. And I want you to take a look at 1 month, the very first one on the left, 3.93. A 1 month yield gives you just a slightly bit more than a 30 year yield. Now, are you going to lend your money for 1 year as opposed to 30 years if you're going to get back the same rate? Of course, you would rather go with the 1 year and not 30, right? I mean, why are you going to tie up your money for that long? I mean, well, it depends. Everyone's different. It is a annual percentage rate. So, I mean, it is different. Everyone has a different view, but this is just to show you where we're at right now. I mean, you can without question, you can see the inversion. And again, looking at the 1 month and the 30 year, the two ends of it, they're relatively the same. I would say this is not looking too good at all. All right, moving on. I'm going to take a look at our website, silverbullion.com.sg, and see what's going on out there. I mean, just continue the CBDC issue, UBI issue. I mean, topic. I mean, these things are going to be important. They're important right now. Looking at our website, silverbullion.com.sg. Let me refresh this. So we can see both metals, silver and gold, relatively unchanged. Platinum, relatively unchanged as well. So both metals, Monday morning here in Asia, relatively unchanged at all. Silver to gold ratio, we were down at 80, 81 last week. We're back up to 83. So still hanging around that 80 level. 80 level is a time where if you're really looking to get gold or silver, that number 80 really tells you that you may want to be looking at getting silver as opposed to gold, being that that 80 handle makes silver cheaper relative to gold. So that's something to keep an eye on. What else is out there? Featured products. Britannias are doing really good. Maples always do well here in Asia. 1 kilogram gold bars are doing well, and LBMA 1,000 ounce bars. And I keep hearing, it is getting more and more difficult to pick up these bars in the West. But I will say here in the East, here in Asia, here in Singapore, it's okay. There's really no issue trying to pick up these 1,000 ounce bars. So if it is something you are looking for, you can get them either at our shop where we have 4 bars. Again, if you're in Singapore, you want to pick it up, go ahead and bring your trolley. This is not light; it is heavy. Well, for international clients, those of you out there in various countries, if you are looking to move into silver and really get the best price you can, 1,000 ounce bars are the way to do it. And if you are hearing that, it is getting increasingly difficult to get in the West, we've had no issues even throughout COVID, getting these 1,000 ounce LBMA bars. I mean, it did slow down a bit, but we've never really had an issue from what I'm hearing relative to the West. So to do this, if you would like to pick it up, do create a account with us. 6 types: personal account, just you; joint account, a trust account; joint account with the minor; business account; and a retirement account. And I'm going to keep harping on this for a while. Retirement accounts, I think these are getting increasingly more and more important as we are seeing the erosion of your pension happening, the erosion of the dollar currency starting to happen. The purchasing power is just it's going down. Purchasing power is going down. So if you do have some type of 401k, self-directed IRA, superannuation fund over in Australia, shoot us an email, sbtv@silverbullion.com.sg, and we'll help you understand what you would need to do to open up an account. And the beauty of this thing is you already have that money in your retirement. So it's not as if you have to open up your wallet and go ahead and buy gold and silver. No, you actually just roll over part of what's in your 401k into a precious metals IRA. So it is easier than you think, and we can help you do that. This is something that at this point right now you might want to consider. Nonetheless, personal account, it is the easiest one. You would like to have these ready to go if in case the time does come for it. Basic information about yourself and an ID to prove you are who you are. And then go ahead and for references, just go ahead and put in SBTV, Silver Bullion Television, and that'll help us out a lot. Newsletters, we don't spam you. In fact, the newsletter is what this live stream is going to be about. One of the newsletters that Vincent has wrote, his most recent one, and I would take this as well. Customer notification. Basically, you're just going to get an email saying you have an email, a secure message from us. So that way, algos are into everything right now. So we need to help reduce or thicken the layers of algo nosiness. All right, moving on to Twitter. See what's going on out there. Some things I bookmarked. Nuriel Rubini, uh, crypto extinction is what Peter Schiff says. So he retweeted something from Peter Schiff. Financial crash. Of course, we know from the financial crash prediction, and he's saying, this isn't a crypto winter. Or crypto winter implies that there will be a spring. He's saying this is a crypto extinction. Kim.com, U.S. Thanksgiving with let's just say Joe. I'll just say Joe. Eggs up 43% year over year. Butter 34% year over year. Flour 25%. Your turkey 17% up year over year or year on year. And potatoes up 15% year on year. So your Thanksgiving dinner is going to be quite a bit more. So you can kind of see the day Thanksgiving is going to turn more and more into a potluck Thanksgiving. But hey, that's the way it was in the beginning, right? I mean, everyone went to that table and they kind of had their own deal that they brought over. All right, nonetheless, Don Durrett, 194 million ounce deficit. Now we know why premiums are going nuts at this pace. How long until wholesalers run out? I've been following silver for 18 years. Inventory has never been this tight. I've been predicting shortages sometime between $35 and $50. And this is what I've been saying. I've been seeing, a lot of things coming from the West saying how difficult it is to get silver. And I can only say here in Asia, the volume is still high, which is why we do have to reorder pretty frequently nowadays. But so far, non-issue with reordering. So I would say, everything you've heard from silver gold moving from west to east, I would have to. It looks like it agree with that, and I'm seeing the end result. Let's see. Yeah, Eric Young silver is at a ridiculously low price. That is for sure. This year, I may or may not play at the end. Uh, Italy, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, she laid it out. She laid it out as to France maybe firing back at Macron, as we saw in that Gerald Salente Trends Journal article. She fired back at France, and she's talking about how real things are being used to for fiat, for fake money. I mean, you and I were toiling away our time, our labor. We're doing real things, and we're getting paid in this fake fiat. So she really laid it out to France. I may or may not play this at the end. Maybe we'll do it. James Rickers, I mean, as you guys know, Elon Musk took over Twitter, and he's been letting people back on the platform. So now we're seeing this exodus again. In this case, CBS News announces they're suspending activity on Twitter. He says that's good, and CBS, in his view, is one of these fake news guys. And so I mean, I'll just share my opinion. This is one of those things, when you shed light on something, and then you see the bugs and the roaches, all of these guys scampering, running away. Well, it looks like Elon Musk is opening back up Twitter, shedding light, and then you're seeing guys who are, well, I'm not going to stay here. I don't want to be here. I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to buy advertisements here, this and that. Kind of like the roaches running away. But I tell you, the world is so polarized. You and I, we cannot let that happen. All right. We got to always see two sides, whether we like it or not. Chris Martinson, here he's saying how we were told not to take this pill starting with an I for the bug that went around the world. And then the FDA came out with something saying that they didn't, basically it wasn't against the law. We didn't, outlaw it or anything. You could have took it. It was just a recommendation for you not to do it. And so really what I get from this, it doesn't matter, necessarily if you believe this way or that way or bug, non-bug. What it really is more about governments and the media again. Governments and media doing their thing to funnel, create a narrative and funnel everybody one way, to think one way. And that's what it's about, where we have to see two sides, whether we like it or not. We should never have these types of book burnings going on and limiting our information. So we have to see what's going on, because what we did see was governments start to reel back their positions and say, well, you didn't have to if you didn't want to, or we didn't say this, we didn't say that. You're going to see more and more of this. But anyway, nonetheless, everybody, we got to do our homework, guys. We have to do it. Let's see, rethinking the dollar. All our pension funds are in trouble. And we've talked about this before with the pension funds and what happened with that low to no interest rate. They had to move into riskier things for one thing, and the yields just never panned out. So these are in trouble. Pension funds. You don't really hear too much about it, but uh, it is. It really is really in trouble. Uh, let's see, Macron, what we just talked about, book burning, and you got to have choices and this and that. And what he's saying here is it seems like you have to take a side. You have to take the U.S. side, or you have to take China's side. But what he's saying is, we should just, instead of these two world orders, we should be following a single world order. You guys know where this is going for sure. And I'll stop here with Luke Groman. Reuters says 10% of silver demand is solar panels. Here's a projected installs in the coming years. Here we are in 2022, and look at that, going up through into 2030 and beyond. So this should absolutely push up silver prices. Again, prices are measured in fiat. Uh, so we'll see how these things really pan out. Main thing, I think it is a good idea to have some silver and to have some gold for sure. All right, so that was a look at Twitter. Next up, topic of the day: the degradation of money from the gold standard to the fiat standard. Before we do that, I'll take a look at some comments here. Tweety Bird, I've been buying junk silver like there's no tomorrow. Uh, is junk silver? I'll be straight that that is my favorite, especially if I were back in the U.S. With no question, that'd be my favorite. And again, it's because if when that time comes, if we do ever have to use our silver, our gold, the first thing that people will recognize are the coins from the past, the junk silver. And then they may recognize other coins like silver eagles or whatever, silver bars, whatever it might be. So there will be that little bit of a transition where, you know, if we're redefining money, uh, without question, I would say people will go back to what they knew as money. That's where junk silver really, really has a role. Let's see. Carrie Ellen Wilder support chaos theory to thwart one world orders. It's yeah, you know how it works, right? And I think Francis Hunt said it when they'll create a problem, have a reaction to it, and then start offering you a solution. So we kind of know how this goes. So anyway, from Vincent Tie, the degradation. Let me go back here. The degradation of money from the gold standard to the fiat dollar system. Now, we hear economists, financial media personalities saying, hey, it was the gold standard that caused the Great Depression of 1929. We hear this. We hear this all the time. And for that reason, they will say having a gold standard, it's ludicrous. In fact, here was an article from the Washington Post: the worst possible cause for the worst possible idea, the gold standard. And what that article started off with was, when it comes to crackpot economic ideas, the gold standard is, well, the gold standard. It's barbarous relic that has nothing to recommend it today, pegging the dollar to the price of gold. you see, is just a doomsday device for turning recessions into depressions. And so this is where they go on to bash the gold standard and how it caused the Great Depression. Now, however, what pretty much no one says or talks about is the gold exchange, which probably was the problem, not the gold standard. And so, what I'd like to share with you all is this article written by Vincent Tie titled The Degradation of Money from the Gold Standard to the Fiat Dollar Standard. Yes, this is the one and same Vincent who is here week in and week out. So, Vincent, appreciate your work here. Here we go. Let me get back to here. Um, it is actually on our website. You can look in resources and then go ahead and type in insights. And here it is, the degradation of money from the gold standard to the fiat dollar standard. So it's actually the first article there. And this is what we're going to be taking a look at November 16th when Vincent went and wrote this article. So what I did was put it in slide format for us all, but it is the same article written by Vincent. All right. So rising inflation is now a global concern. News of protests around the world over soaring cost of living is rife. And the effects of inflation have become real as we face rising prices in our daily lives. Officials and central bankers are blaming supply chain disruptions caused by the you know what you know what. All right. So we'll pause here for a bit. What causes inflation? I mean, too much money chasing too few goods is one definition. And too much money has been printed, and supply chains, in some cases, they're decreasing, some cases slowing, some cases disappearing. Even disappearing is happening. Yet no head of government or head of a central bank will acknowledge their money printing, their stimulus, their bailouts, and picking winners and losers. Don't ever forget this. Picking winners and losers during the pandemic is the cause or part of the cause of inflation. Why won't they do that? You tell me why won't they do that? All right. So Vincent goes on to write, however, a startling pattern of the causes of inflation emerges when we review how the global monetary system has changed since the beginning of the 20th century from the classical gold standard to the gold exchange standard and eventually today's fiat dollar standard. Okay, so we see how this went, right? We went from that classical gold to the exchange to fiat dollars. Now, when we view today's problems through history's lens, we see the unmistakable recurring parallels with the past and understand that the central problem is really currency, currency debasement. Now, the classical gold standard from 1870 to 1914, the classical gold standard was not planned at an international conference. Instead, it came naturally based on many centuries of experience and practice, encountering currency debasement and finding solutions to preserve money's purchasing power. It was a logical treatment of what money ought to be, that it should be a good store of value. Now, under the classical gold standard, participating countries such as the US, Canada, Australia, France, and Germany fixed their value of their currencies to a specified amount of gold. As an example, the US fixed the price of gold at $20.67 per ounce. Non participating countries could, in turn, link their currency to that of a country that did so. So having a gold standard does not mean that you and I have to walk around and carry bags of gold coins. They had the option to use gold-backed currencies for transactions, and currencies could be converted into gold. The gold standard operated with such predictability and was rules-based, strictly limiting the amount of circulating money to a multiple of central banks' gold reserves. Now, countries with a balance of payments deficit would see gold outflows, while countries with surpluses would experience gold inflows. Therefore, it was difficult for a country to have a persistent trade deficit which would lead to persistent net outflows of gold without potentially destabilizing the currency's value. Now, while the gold standard existed from 1821, the period between 1870 and 1914 is often regarded as its heyday. Now, currency's purchasing power was stable and inflation was only between 0 to 1%. Inflation was only between 0 to 1%. Now, the period of the classical gold standard was marked by unprecedented peace, economic growth, and relatively free trade in goods, labor, and capital. So that classical gold standard, peace, prosperity, low to no inflation, free trade in goods, labor, and capital. From 1870 to 1914, it was all good. Everything was all good. Why? Why was it all good? Straight away, we're going to think because it was on a classical gold standard. Thing is, when World War One broke out in 1914, many countries went off the classical gold standard to indulge in war financing. Now, had the gold standard not been suspended, the war would not have lasted more than a few months. Instead, the negligence of monetary discipline with deficit spending and printing paper money resulted in a 4-year war that devastated major economies with millions of lives lost. With the conclusion of the war in 1918, countries began rebuilding their economies, and a return to the gold standard was considered. However, it was impossible to return to the pre war gold standard without devaluing currencies, given the war inflation. Only the US remained on the gold standard during, during the war. Now, the global monetary system stayed stayed in limbo until 1922, the General Conference, where all European governments resolved to adopt a gold exchange standard under which only the US dollar was as good as gold. Although Britain was not on the gold standard, it redeemed pounds not merely in gold, but also in dollars. Now, European countries bereft of gold as a result of the war could hold pounds as foreign exchange reserves. And the result was a pyramiding of the US dollar on gold, British pounds on dollars, and other European currencies on pounds. Unfortunately, adopting the gold exchange standard was not a return to the classical gold standard. Redemption of gold by European citizens was restricted to large gold bars, which were unsuitable for day to day transactions instead of coins. This prevented an exodus of gold from central bank vaults. In other words, in some cases, you got to remove a full, let's say, 400-ounce LBMA bar today. How many people actually had that back then, right? So this prevented people from doing it. Now, the gold exchange standard created global demand for the dollar and the pound, both of which Great Britain and the US were glad to print. They were happy to print it and supply the world. However, foreign exchange reserves held in European central banks reached levels far higher than the General Conference participants envisioned. Now, in the 10 years prior to World War I, European central banks held between 250 million and 400 million in foreign exchange reserves. By 1928, they were 2.5 billion. And without the restraints of the classical gold standard, Great Britain and the US printed much more currency than gold in their reserves. Both currencies were overvalued, and both countries had a chronic balance of payments deficit. And between mid 1922 and 1928, bank credit expanded by over twice as much as the financing for World War I. Though on the surface, there was great prosperity during the roaring 20s and people became affluent. In reality, inflation was rife and money went into the stock market and real estate, causing speculative excess. The Dow Jones Industrial Average increased sixfold between 1921 and 1929. And just to add in, it seems like this is where we exactly are again today. And now by 1920, the Federal Reserve began tightening liquidity by raising rates. Now, this act was followed by foreign central banks. Bereft of liquidity, the epic US boom ended in cataclysmic Wall Street crash of 1929. Now, similar finance crashes followed in Europe and other parts of the world, heralding the beginning of a depression. Heralding the beginning of a depression. As Vincent says here, history is repeating. Guys, there's I mean, so far from what we're seeing here, history is absolutely repeating, and it was not the cause of the gold standard. It was not the cause of the gold standard. When you did have that gold standard, the classical gold standard, we were limited in a lot of ways, yes, but we were also responsible in a lot of ways. So when you weigh the two, the risk and the reward definitely outweighs the risk when we are held accountable and responsible. All right. So moving on here. With confidence evaporating in the financial markets, countries like France, holding pounds in reserves, began asking Great Britain for gold. Runs on British gold eventually forced Great Britain off the gold standard in 1931. Now, this development stunned the world as Great Britain was viewed as the world's premier financial power for centuries. It brought about the collapse of the gold exchange standard and turned an economic depression into the 1930s Great Depression. So, again, so far, is anything gold's fault? I mean, is anything gold's fault? More specifically, the gold standard's fault, the classical gold standard's fault? Or is this looking more and more like it was not the gold standard, but the gold exchange that was wreaking havoc with world economies? And so, what we saw France doing with the UK, we also saw them. I think, as most of us know, we saw them do with the US later on. Um, and this is what happens, when countries they start to not believe that your money is worth as much as you are trying to be told it is, or perceive that it has the value that it really may not. We saw this again. A lot of it had to do with the petrodollar, right? And so we went through some 50 years or whatever it is, and guys are getting tired. So we're getting a lot of Frances, countries like France out there, who are calling, who are making a call on the paper money, where it's just it's no longer holding the value that it should, much less being weaponized the way it is. So we're really having big problems with this. Let me take a look at a few comments. We'll continue on. Carolyn Wilder, yes, history rhymes. History rhymes. Prepare for the impact. Um, Carlos, in the mid 1800s, London and UK had all the gold and little silver, and UK convinced US to leave silver standard in 1893. Colorado silver mines dried up a great deal. California gold did okay in 1893. Bit of history there. Bit of history there. Thank you for that. Let's see what else is okay. Let's move on with Vincent's article. So far we're digesting quite a few interesting things here. Bretton Woods. Now we get to Bretton Woods. This system that emerged post World War II was not a gold standard. Instead, it was similar to the gold exchange standard of the 1920s. The dollar was fixed to gold at now $35 an ounce, and other currencies were pegged to the dollar. Like the gold exchange standard, the Bretton Woods system contained within itself the seeds of its own destruction, because gold was not the arbiter of trust. Because gold was not the arbiter of trust. Instead, it was the faith that the US government would ensure that the dollar was as good as gold for trade. So the trust was not in gold, the trust was in the US, where the US would do the right thing, where they would ensure the dollar was as good as good as gold for trade, but it was not gold. Only gold is gold. So once again, like its 1920s predecessor, the Bretton Woods system gave the United States the power to print currency and run a balance of payments deficit. Similar or seeing similarities with the 1920s, Jacques Rueff, a prominent French economist and advisor to the French government, predicted the eventual Bretton Woods system collapse in a 1965 interview with The Economist. In Russ's interview, or his view, dollars being the reserve currency accumulated with foreign central banks in trade with the US, since the dollars are of no use in Bonn or in Tokyo or in Paris, the dollars are relent to the US money market and the very same day the place of dollar origin. So therefore the US never feels the effect of a deficit in its balance of payments. Ref further illustrates with this example. If I had an agreement with my tailor that whatever money I pay him, he returns to me the very same day as a loan, I would have no objection at all to ordering more suits from him. Now, as dollars began piling up in foreign central banks' reserves, there were increasing doubts about whether dollars were really backed by US gold reserves. Inflation had risen from 1.5% in 1960 to nearly 6% in 1970. 6%. And you look at where we are today with a whole lot more money that has been printed. So runs on US gold followed first by private individuals redeeming dollars for gold and then by foreign central banks. In a desperate attempt to stem the outward flow of gold, we know what happened here. President Nixon announced the closing of the gold window back in 1971, temporary one nonetheless, thereby severing the dollar's link to gold. Nixon shock of 71 was the primary catalyst for the 1970 stagflation, which saw double-digit annual inflation occur twice within a decade, reaching a high of nearly 14% in 1980. And guys, I showed you the price of food for Thanksgiving. We're seeing the same things. Now, floating world currencies have been anything but stable since. Now, despite being the dominant reserve currency, the US dollar has lost at least 87% of its purchasing power since 1970. This is only since 1970. 87% of purchasing power gone, wiped out. Without the restraints from gold, the US national debt has ballooned to over $31 trillion dollars with a perennial widening balance of payments deficit. It is time we realize that there is little to no precedent of the US government repaying its debt fully since the country's inception. Instead, debt default is the likely scenario, given the many times instances in history. And we can see a clear pattern of the degradation of the monetary system and currencies as the rigorous classical gold standard gave way to the substandard gold exchange standard surrogate, which failed and brought about the fully fiat monetary system we are now living under. With the systemic removal of gold from the monetary system, governments have never succeeded in reining in real inflation and debt. They have never preserved the purchasing power of currencies. They consistently fail despite politicians' promises or central banks' assurances. Without gold, the original money, currencies will always be debased and cannot survive. When the current fiat dollar system implodes, can the monetary system go any lower in its next iteration? Or will gold be once again called upon to be its bedrock? There are really or already signs of the latter. Global central banks have accumulated gold reserves this year at a pace never seen since 1967. This run on gold will only accelerate once inflationary pressure proves to be untenable despite the Fed's actions. History is rhyming once again if it's not repeating. If it's not repeating. Exactly. So that article was written by Vincent. It was just written by Vincent last week. I think the date was November 16th. So Vincent, appreciate that article and the research that you did. It's interesting to see how, we were on the gold standard, classical gold standard. Then it moved to a exchange, a type of an exchange standard. And it's gotten even worse to a fiat standard. And eventually this is going to break as well. I think we are seeing the cracks getting longer, getting deeper. We are seeing the same. This is why it is probably more important right now than any time in history to have some gold, have some silver. Again, none of this is financial advice. Vincent says, with the gold exchange standard, the gold served only to lure people with confidence in the system. But there was a back door for reserve currencies to print money independent of gold reserves. Great point. And that's what the gist of the article is about. Um, when governments are not held to account, uh, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And always expect the government to leave a back door. We kind of talked about this before in the context of uh, governments always have deals on the table which you and I know about, and there are always deals under the table which you and I don't know about, and we find out in time. Um, let's see, Ralph Steiner, after the USA's bankruptcy, that is true. US actually did go bankrupt. Following the Civil War and the initial gold loan by the British bankers to President Grant. All right, good bit of history there. Carrie Ellen Wilder, in God we trust, all others must be made to pay in gold. Absolutely. And I mean, if you think about it, um, you know, when that petrodollar came about, and Saudi Arabia, when you think of the story of the tailor, right? You pay the tailor, and then the tailor says, "What am I going to do with this money?" And then, oh, you can make a loan back to me. You think about the petrodollar. So Saudi Arabia got all its friends to sell oil only in gold, and then to sell wait, to sell oil in U.S. dollars. And so when you think about it, they had all of this excess U.S. dollars, and hey, uh, Mr. U.S. President, what am I going to do with all of this U.S. dollars now? U.S. says, hey, you can invest, buy some bonds, or your country is growing, it's a developing country. You can invest in U.S. companies. Will come to Saudi and help you build things. And so it's kind of like what they did. And so it was like that Taylor story, where you go and you the tailor has excess dollars, Saudi has excess dollars. What do I do with it? Well, you can make me a loan. The US says you can make me a loan. You can buy bonds or whatever it is. Or, again, uh you can build up your country. You can spend those US dollars by having US companies go to your country and help you build it up. So US never really felt the pain. We've never felt it. And I think that's it's right to say that. I don't think we felt it much the same way the rest of the world did. But I really want to look at your comments here. We are having a period of high inflation again, similar to the 70s. Absolutely. I know one of you guys, or all of you folks, are seeing this, um, for sure, without question. You are you are seeing this. Mr. Nguyen, the dollar is backed in petrol. When the pro is gone, or petrol, I suppose, what will back what will back CBDCs? That's a great question, because a lot of us, we're kind of hoping it'll be gold. We're hoping we can get back to some type of sound money system. But within CBDCs itself, um, it's divided. Some people absolutely feel it's not the way to go. Some people feel it's a great way to go. And so, you've got to, however you feel, I mean, or what you think, you should let it be known, because this is something, if it comes to that, very, very difficult to go back to what things were. um Ralph Steiner, yes, France and the United States were two of the more notable countries on the bimetallic standard. Absolutely. um Yeah, Harold B. Thanks, Harold B. I hope when we see this pattern, we can think for ourselves what the next monetary system will be. Absolutely. This is critically important. critically important right now. Vincent, thank you. Very succinct and excellent article. Vincent, appreciate that. So again, hey, another reason, visit silverbullion.com.sg uh, for whatever you may need as far as protection, systemic wealth protection, gold, silver vaulting. We have our own vault. You're not dealing with the third party vault, which means we are out there creating the best types of insurance for you with the jurisdiction of Singapore, which is one of the more favorable jurisdictions in the world. So email us, sbtv at silverbullion.com.sg, and we'll see what we can do. And again, for you guys with 401ks, definitely email us. Um, we really want to be discussing what things that we can be doing there. But I want to show you. I guess I will play this one last clip. Um, just to get your take on it. And understand this is not a bash against gold or anything like that. It's more about how you and I are toiling away, our giving our time, our labor to get things that are real, but we're giving something that is basically not real, meaning the money. So I'll just play this last clip and then I'll let you guys have a go at it.
Questo si chiama franco CFA. È la moneta coloniale che la Francia stampa per 14 nazioni africane, alle quali applica il signoraggio e in forza delle quali sfrutta le risorse di questa nazione. Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina Faso esporta. L'oro che questo bambino si infila in un cunicolo per tirare fuori finisce per lo più nelle casse dello Stato francese. Allora la soluzione non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa, la soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che hanno.
All right, let me back up a bit here.
Questo?
Okay, the thing with this, and no disrespect to what's going on there, but all of us, every single one of us, we are that same child going down, doing our work, central banks accumulating gold, at the same time giving us fiat. Every single one of us, you, me, Vincent, who wrote the article as well, every single one of us, we are that child going down into the mine, doing our work, toiling away, getting fiat while we see central banks accumulating gold, the real money, and giving us fiat, the paper money. And that's why it's so important we understand this. And it's so important we understand what real money is, true money is, sound money is. We see these, as Rob Kirby would say, chicanery. We see it going on over and over and over. Classical gold standard, gold exchange, fiat money. Here we are working, day in and day out. We every single one of us we are that child. Central banks made us that child. We got to grow up. You and I have to grow up. There's just no question to that already. So I'll end with some commentary here. Now the gold standard works almost perfectly, works well. When you have governments, politicians, central banks intervening with what was nearly perfect, you get less than perfect. Eventually that intervention will break, and once it'll break a once working system. We see how things fall apart when we go off gold, right? We all see this, we all know this. We see how then it all goes back to gold in an effort to restore, to fix, to reset. And we're in a time right now, you and me, where owning gold, owning silver as stores of value, it should be on the top of your priority list, or at least ranked pretty well up there. Thing is, you decide. Do you want to make money or protect what you made? Because this is where we are right now. A lot of folks still want to make money, and I get it. Everybody wants to make money. But like I say, a lot of the wealthy I talk to, they are shading over more towards protecting what they've made. They understand what's going on. They see what's going on. We're here today, now, where you and I are going to have to decide. As Francis Hunt said in our most recent interview, Every bank is an FTX. It's only a matter of time, which means you have time to do the necessary things to protect your wealth. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up on my end. I'll just take a look at a few of the comments, but I'm just saying, when I saw that clip, I thought about it, and I said, I'm that kid. We're all that kid, working real work, real time, real labor, and we're being given paper, fake paper, while the governments they're getting gold. The gold is my priceless time, your priceless time, as well as filling up the central banks. So, I mean, I don't know, guys. You tell me, what are your thoughts on this? And again, Vincent, great article. Appreciate that, because it really does help us to understand, and I appreciate your work in there, as you can see a lot of people do as well. Um, Let me see what else is out there. Steve Whitus, banks are worse than FTX. The government will save banks with debt to the people. Absolutely. And it's something that Francis Hunt talked about, where the banks are actually worse than FT, FTX. Mr. Nguyen, gold will be money after the reset. Ask fiat revert back to its intrinsic value of zero. And that's the thing. I mean, we're seeing what's kind of happening with crypto. Now, I know, guys, they say, there's Bitcoin and there's everything else. And I mean, I get everything the crypto guys say, but when it comes to that intrinsic value, you definitely don't have it in the commodity tangible types of things. Commodities are real things that we use, whether in industry, in everyday living, whether we consume things like food. Commodities are real, and that's what we're going to find out what we need, things that are absolutely real. All right, let me look at a few more comments here. um let's see. Yeah, so Vincent, when we hear governments proposing another new fiat or gold exchange type system, we know the likelihood of its failure given the bad track record in history. Exactly right. Um, I do think gold is going to come back to have to account for the misdeeds, the printing that the government has done. I absolutely do think we're going to see the rise in price in gold, rise in price in silver. But then again, that's the good side. Now, the flip side to the coin is, what will the world be like? What is the world going to be like when this all happens? So that's absolutely another story on its own. Yes, absolutely. She is the she's the boss lady, without question, without question. Yeah, you wouldn't want to get her too mad, but um, she called France out. I mean, Macron called her out. She called him out, and but nonetheless, the story is true. We're given fiat, and they're getting real things. Our commodity, you're in a good way. You're a commodity. You're something real, something valued. You're something the world needs. You're a commodity, which is why we always say, be a blessing and not a burden, because a lot of people they're gonna need help eventually. Um, yeah, Carolyn Wilder, I'll wrap up with this one. Using CBDCs would be worse than being a Pennsylvania miner living in a company town, paid in script, and forced to buy at the company store. Absolutely. I've seen that happen as well in my home state of Hawaii with the plantations. Did the same thing. So, sound money, it starts with you and me. Again, um, commodities, you are one, I am one, and I mean that in the best way. We are valued. So do what we can to keep that value, maintain that value, and make others who think they are not valuable, make them understand that they are one and the same as well. So again, appreciate you all being here. Be a blessing, not a burden. We got a lot of work to do. I appreciate the thumbs ups. I do appreciate it if we do get some subscriptions, some shares, and things like that. Uh, Gift card winners, we'll send it out after the live stream, and I'll see you guys next week. For those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to you. We all have a lot to be thankful for, and appreciate. So I'll see you guys next week. Take care, one and all. Saddle up for what's coming ahead, and silver up as well. Take care.